This is FinTech Futures at FinovateFall, and I'm joined by David Porter of Genesys. David, how are you?
Fabulous, thank you, Paul.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with us. Just to get started, I'd like to give us a quick introduction to yourself and your role at Genesys.
Oh, sure. So, Managing Director for Financial Services at Genesys. For us, it's the single largest vertical in the company, so it's super important to us. Global role. I've been here for 2 years, and the last 25, 30 years of my life have been working in banking and financial services, JP Chase, American Express, Lloyds. So this is all I've ever done.
Excellent. Well, thank you again for taking the time out to speak with us. So you're here delivering a keynote speech on modernising the customer experience in banking. So to get started there, I mean, how have customer expectations then changed when it comes to their banking experience then? And what are the key drivers?
All right, so I would say it's not so much, well, there are two parts to the question, like expectations than the drivers. I think it's less about expectations, it's more about experiences. So if you think of your banking experiences, I don't know, today's Monday, in the last 2 days, we don't need to put our hands up, but, have we checked a bill and paid it online? Have we transferred money from one account to another? Have we transferred money to a friend? Have we checked our statements online? Have we looked at our retirement accounts? In fact, if we're boring anyone with this conversation, you could go into your retirement account in the app on your phone, rebalance your retirement account as we speak. And you couldn't do those things 10 years ago, and now you can. So experiences have totally been transformed. In terms of the drivers behind them, like why has that happened? Well, it's been in the interests of banks to push self-service onto clients because it's more cost effective. And by the way, clients like it. They like to be in control of their money and much more control, so that's good too. And of course, the technology's got much better. So those are the key driving forces behind why has all this innovation and transformation happened.
Excellent. And with the speed of change at the moment in terms of digital transformation and new technologies popping up, how difficult has it been for banks to keep up with that, and what hurdles exist?
Oh, okay, so it's not easy. No, you don't need to take my word for it. A couple of months ago, BCG published a list of the top 50 most innovative companies in the world. And as I said, I've worked in financial services all my life. So to my chagrin, in that top 50 most innovative companies, there is not a single bank, not a single one. Who is the top 5? Well, you could guess, but I'll say it. It's Tesla, Apple, Amazon, Google, Microsoft. So it's technology companies that have been transforming people's everyday lives. And it's hard for banks to play catch up in that space. Now, it's hard for a couple of reasons. One is, how do those companies thrive? Well, they have this kind of work fast, break things, fix things, then keep going. You can't do that if you're a bank. You can't, for many reasons. So that's hard. And secondly, legacy technologies. Big banks, have technology platforms built and installed 20, 30 years ago. It's just hard to do things. And from a regulatory standpoint, it's hard to be fast because everything needs to be kind of ticked and tied. So those are some challenges.
Excellent. And how should banks be looking to approach then new technologies and their technology strategies to keep up with this?
So I think there are a couple of areas. One is the actual area of kind of generative AI, large language models. It promises a lot for the future. And I think that's super exciting actually across so many areas of banking, whether it's financial planning, wealth management, client service, risk management. There's a whole bunch of areas of application. So that's the technology. But then in terms of the lens banks have, mystery shop. And I don't mean mystery shop if you're Bank of America, go look at what JP Chase are doing, But go to different countries, different places. Go to Turkey, Israel, Sweden, New Zealand. That's where you'll find some crazy examples of really interesting things happening in banking. So more mystery shopping in that space, I think, will be super useful.
Excellent. And Genesys is particularly looking at AI and machine learning as well. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how you've been looking to reach
Oh, sure. So we've taken things now, I would say, kind of bite-sized chunks, pursue use cases that just make sense and you can explain easily. So let me try. So for example, we have technology, we call it predictive routing, which basically says, here is where we think a client contact should initially be sent. Then predictive engagement says, this is what we think the client is actually interested in talking about. Predictive engagement. Then we have technology called Agent Assist that kind of hums away in the background during an advisor or banker conversation and says, you should read a disclosure now. Or, hey, this sounds like a great time to mention a product offer. And other just similar helpful hints. So there's a whole bunch of things where we have simple applications that are actually quite difficult to bring to market, but I can explain them really easily. So I think that's kind of, for us, where the future lies, just more of these use case-based, easily explainable technologies.
Excellent. I mean, generative AI has been one of the big talking points of the year so far. How have you looked to tap into that technology as well?
So I would say there are a couple of approaches here. One is kind of what not to do. And what not to do is don't go and hire 500 computer scientists from MIT and Stanford and UCLA. Don't do that. Back to bite-sized chunks. And the bite-sized chunks mean looking, as I said, at the areas of like client service, wealth management, planning, risk management, etc., where kind of large-scale operations, transactions, volumes lend themselves to Gen AI, large language models, and you can basically come up with some really good use cases in that space. So I think that's where we're going to spend much more of our time.
Excellent. And just to sum up then, so what are the key considerations that you think when it comes to banks and when improving their customer experience then?
So I'd say, first of all, know who your client is, right? So understand their wants and needs. And then think about how their wants and needs can be better met by the technologies versus what takes place today. Like, just do that first. Then back to, don't boil the ocean, simple use cases that just make sense. Then at the same time, keep a lens on the regulatory environment, keep an eye on kind of challenges and say the disparate impact, model governance space. Those are the key things to balance.
Excellent, excellent. Just to finish off then, is there anything else you can tell us about Genesys as well you've got in the pipeline at the moment?
Well, rather than pipeline, it's important as a technology vendor that's critical to banks and their operations to have like a great partner ecosystem. So for a company like Genesys, which we operate in the client experience space, it's super important that we can have natively integrate, say, to AWS. We're built on and in AWS, so that's important. We are natively integrated with, say, Adobe. And then last week, we announced native integrations with Salesforce. So all of these things are like kind of exciting, important, and that kind of partner ecosystem for us, and developing it is super important. Obviously, we have our own technology roadmap. We mentioned a few of these things, large language models, generative AI, they're all on the roadmap for us. So watch the space, much more to come.
Some exciting times. So thank you again, David, for taking the time out to speak to us.
Cheers, Paul.
It's been a pleasure.
A pleasure. All right.